Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome to another episode. So, in today's episode, what I really want to do is give a little bit of a more greater update, talking a little bit about President Donald Trump's recently approved One Big Beautiful Bill. Now, in today's video is that we are not going to be talking about necessarily what's inside of this bill, because there was already another video that I made talking about the details about what's inside this bill, which I'm going to link at the very end screen. But assuming that you probably have already seen so many different videos talking about what's inside of this bill, today's video, what I really want to do is talk about the significance about who actually is going to benefit from this bill, who is actually potentially going to be hurt from this bill, and ultimately how this bill is going to be potentially impacting every single person watching this video on a bigger economic level. Because the idea really is that there are some areas where all of the people in their economy, because at the end of the day, obviously some people will benefit from this bill, some people will be hurt from this bill, but we all live in the same economy. We all share the same inflation, share the same prices, share the same access to resources and a lot of things. And so there are areas where everyone is going to be impacted. And then I also maybe want to talk a little bit about the greater significance about this, because although I've seen so many videos about this, and you probably have already seen these videos as well, talking about what's inside of this bill, there are not a lot of people talking about the dark side about how this bill, and that's so important to communicate, how this bill might potentially hurt a lot of people. The idea really behind this one is that there is going to be a population of people that will become very wealthy from this bill over the next couple of years. But there's also going to be a very big population of people that might potentially be left behind. So if you are someone that is looking to try to get ahead of as many people as possible, if you are someone that's trying to potentially get rich from all of this stuff, then this is going to be the video for you to hopefully share insight. If this sounds relatively confusing, hopefully by the very end of this video, everything will be clarified, everything will make a lot more sense, so it will not be as confusing, and you'll hopefully get a better understanding to what's happening. So with that being said, let's just get right to this video. But as always, if you guys enjoy videos like this, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, feel free to share any thoughts, and let's get started. So we're going to start by talking about the people that are going to be benefiting from this bill on the surface level answer, and then the people that are going to be hurt by this bill on a surface level answer before we get into the deeper answer as well. But essentially, this infographic right here really highlights the people that will benefit as well as the people that will be hurt by it. It's right on the screen, but if you want me to read it to you, essentially what it really says is that essentially all of the high income households will benefit because there are going to be a lot of tax cuts and tax breaks for them. People who have children will benefit because of the increase in the child tax credit, which we talked about again in the other video that we made, which I'm going to put at the end screen as well. And then people, interestingly, a little bit random, but people that drive traditional cars, so traditional car manufacturers, and then also, of course, people that work jobs such as collecting tips or a lot of overtime pay, since they no longer have to pay taxes on them. However, the people that will really be hurt by this are essentially a lot of the people in poorer communities, because these tend to be the people that will be on food stamps, so SNAP benefits food stamps. A lot of SNAP benefit food stamps recipients will be hurt because they're decreasing the budget to allocate to this program. Medicaid beneficiaries, a lot of people that are on Medicaid health insurance will be impacted, and then a lot of EV manufacturers. The last one's a little bit more interesting, but essentially many people in the poorer communities will be impacted, since they will be cutting out a lot of these support services, welfare, and programs that help to give people a chance to come back together. And I think that that's going to be the big idea behind this one. So overall, what this really means and the significance behind this is that if you are someone that's part of the middle to upper class, you will probably be benefiting from this because of a lot of these tax breaks. But the really sad news is that if you are someone that's currently struggling financially, especially because I know, again, going back, is that a lot of these programs are expected to not necessarily be cut, but certainly be they're just not going to allocate as much money to these programs, then you might potentially actually be going through a setback because of these programs. And I think that's one of the big things that's going to happen to a lot of people. So overall, what this means is that the impact about this is that we already know that inside of our country, there is a very massive wealth gap and inequality between the richest people, how the richest people have basically most of the wealth in our country, and then the poorest people who basically just don't have really much to get together, in general. So the story is that because of this new bill, that wealth gap is expected to increase even greater. And this is one of the first very surface level dark sides to really talk about how this is going to impact a lot of things that are inside of this bill. Now, the next area that we really have to talk about how this is going to potentially be impacting. Now, this one is going to impact every single person. We're going to get even deeper now than before. And it's going to be talking about the debt crisis. So the story with the debt crisis situation is that essentially right now at this time, our country is currently 36.1 trillion with a T, trillion dollars, with most of the debt having compounded and worsened over the last couple of years since the pandemic happened. So essentially throughout much of the 2020s, a lot of this debt and inflation, this is the time period when a lot of things really worsened since the pandemic happened, since the stimulus days when most people, found my channel in general. So huge shout out if you guys have been here since the stimulus days. Huge love. You guys are the best. But notice the sharp increase, especially at the end. Well, the story is that under this new bill, that increase, that compounded amount, that very end that you see with the time period from 2020 to future present day, that's expected to worsen right now. And inflation as a result, because of a lot of the situation that's happening, such as more money printing, giving rich people more money in their pockets, this is going to worsen inflation even greater. And this is really just something that's logic. Although it is something that is related to the future, and obviously nobody knows what the future is, you can kind of foresight it based off of what's happening right now is that inflation is very probable that it's going to worsen. And the reason why is that because as you give more money to people inside and as you put more money in people's pockets, they have more money to spend, which is really great. But the value of the dollar is also going to weaken as well, which is something that hopefully most of us have already learned if you've been following this channel for a while now. If you guys haven't, maybe consider subscribing, but you guys probably already know we've talked about this since the stimulus days, where essentially as you give more money to people in their pockets, it does offer a safety net and support, which is really awesome. But you have to be very cautious about who you are giving that money to, because if you give it to people like the ultra wealthy, which is what's going on in this situation, you're providing tax breaks, you're giving them extra money in their pockets, you're making so they don't have to pay as much in taxes, you're giving families more money through the child tax credit. This is all just going to worsen inflation even greater than it already is, which I think is probably one of the big things that not a lot of people are talking about, that is just so important to communicate right now at this time. Now, I will say one thing though is that, as I did mention earlier in this video, is that there are some people that will be getting very wealthy from this video, and there are not from this from this video, but also just from this time in general. But there's also going to be a lot of people that might be drawing through a lot of setbacks because of a result of the approval of this bill. And one of the things I have to talk about is really talking about for anyone out there that's looking to get wealthy, because I think that's something that most people hopefully want to do, is how can you potentially benefit from all of the stuff that's happening. And it's that because of what is going on right now in our country, it is expected that not only are the wealthy people going to get even more wealthier because of a lot of the things that we already talked about, such as tax cuts, putting more money in their pockets, programs and stuff like that, but it also means that because of a lot of the stuff that's happening, asset prices, investments, and things like that is expected to go up even greater. So it means that things such as the stock market, the housing market, investing, everything in that world, prices are expected to increase with it as well. However, what this really does mean, and this is the part that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, is that what it really means is that if you are someone that is looking to protect your wealth, if you are looking to build wealth even greater than what it is, then it means that it's even more important, greater than ever, to potentially try to invest your money. However, the problem is, and this is the part again not a lot of people are talking about right now, is that most of the people that have wealth to invest, they are the rich people. The problem is that most of the people in poorer communities are not thinking about investing because they don't have the money to invest. And I totally relate to it there, because if you've been following this channel for a while, as someone whether you probably know that the fact that I run a finance channel means that I'm obviously very passionate about personal finance. But while that is true, is in a lot of my early days when I was starting to build up this channel and coming up, most of the videos I made were talking about things such as like stimulus, unemployment, making money when you don't have a lot of money, saving money, and things like that. So why do I mention all of this is that because back in the day, and I totally relate by this, is that there were many situations where I had the knowledge how to build wealth, but I sadly did not have the resources to build wealth. In other words, it's sort of like being the smart kid who has the skills and the talent to go a certain place, but the problem is that they don't have the money, the resources, and the background and the education and the connections to get there. So why this is really relatable is that because at the time period, I realized that I had a lot of the knowledge that was needed to build wealth, such as like how important it is to max out your Roth IRA. But because I didn't have the actual resources and the money to max out my Roth IRA, I was going through a setback. I was feeling very behind in life because of because of a lot of the stuff that was happening to me at that time period. So how this is related and what is the bottom line, the point behind this part is that because there's going to be a lot of people that might maybe through this video now know that how important it is to invest their money. But the problem is that because they don't have the resources or the money or the funds to physically invest, especially because as we've already mentioned how the wealth gap is expected to widen even greater now because of this bill, it means that the wealthy people are going to be getting even richer from this. However, the poorer communities are going to potentially be set back and be struggling even greater because of what's going on with this bill. And I think this is really the big dark side that not a lot of channels, not a lot of videos, and not a lot of people are talking about right now that I think is really important to really take away about how this is going to impact everyone in our daily lives. But of course, what ultimately ends up happening, we just have to see in one of the future episodes of The Kevin Show. But beyond that is that hopefully this makes clear about what's going on right now. I think that probably covers most of what I really wanted to cover. We talked a lot about, well, maybe run through the points that I really wanted to cover because I listed a bunch of bullet points, but we talked about inflation, we talked about investing, we talked about the proof about this, because the reality also, that's another thing, I also realized that is important to share is that because most people that found and this is the last point I'm going to make before we sign off on this video, is that most people that found my channel found me during the stimulus days, during the unemployment days. And it is a very no mistaken reason why whenever I post a video that talks about investing or stock market related stuff, these videos tend not to do very well. And it's, sorry, there was just some noise that was coming out of my machine going on there, but the idea is that a lot of the videos that I make talking about the stock market, talking about investing, tend not to do very well. And I think the reason why they tend not to do very well is that because most people that found my channel are people that are not looking to invest. And the reason why is that because they don't have the money to invest, they don't have the resources to invest, which is the really sad thing. But the reality is that in order to be able to build wealth, you need to have these resources to be able to do so. So the bottom line behind this one is that a lot of people will get very wealthy from this, but a lot of people may potentially be left behind because of this situation. That's what's going on. Of course, I would love to hear your particular thoughts about this. Feel free to share anything, even if you just wanted to say hi. It is always great to hear from you guys. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.